Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. I'm excited today. We have Miranda Devine. She is an award-winning columnist at the New York Post. Miranda, thank you so much for being on today.
Pleasure to be on with you, Tudor.
Your ears must have been ringing recently because the former first son was chatting about you again. He doesn't really like you. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I wonder why.
I actually have the clip. I want to play it really quick because I want to get your reaction. So this is Hunter Biden. He's a little mad about the laptop thing still his fault, but here it is. Here he goes.
There's no ethics in what, like someone as horrendously ugly as Miranda Devine, physically and in terms of her and in terms of her ethics. It does. I mean, she is, and that goes for, I mean, Daily Mail and, but I mean, they're whores. I mean, they're whores for money. And, she does it because she makes money. And, when she goes to sleep at night, I'm sure she sleeps just fine. But, I don't know anybody that's going to be mourning her when she's gone.
I
She's an
think
ugly person.
First of all, you're gorgeous. Secondly, it's so funny how you actually do report for money. That's called a job, but Hunter might not know what a job is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I mean, look, he's a damaged, broken person, and he's lashing out, and he's now decided that because his father's no longer relevant, that he's going to try and grab some limelight by going on these podcasts. And I'm not sure what he's doing to support himself or whether he's got, hidden pots of money somewhere. But, I don't wish him any harm. I understand he's upset about the way his father was dispatched and the way things turned out for him. But he got a pardon. His father gave him a pardon going right back to 2014. And, he made tens of millions of dollars off his father's name with his father's help, influence peddling around the world, causing great damage to America's good name and potentially to America's national security. So, I just don't really have much time for any of the Bidens. I've written as much as I could, find out about them in 2 books and all my reporting. I think that at least the American people now know that Joe Biden, who he really was or is, not, honest Joe, modest Joe, the poorest man in Congress, as he made out he was, a great father. None of those things is true. So I think for history, at least, even if no one's going to jail, at least people know really the full story about Joe Biden.
And you make such a good point. He's upset about how his father was pushed kind of out of the presidency, but it's not because of the laptop. That's the interesting part about it. He actually, after this was all revealed, his father still got elected. He still had the mainstream media that covered. I mean, and they really covered and lied. And then they continued lying for Kamala Harris. That's the thing that shocks me, is that he could say anything when they have this. Anybody who reports the truth is a whore, but anybody who covers for them is their best friend.
Yes. And pure of ethics.
Yeah, right. Yes.
I mean, yes, the story of the laptop, we didn't have all of it, but we had, Rudy Giuliani had been given the hard drive copy of the laptop by the laptop repair shop owner, John Paul MacIsaac, a hero. Rudy's a hero. And, we reported what we could and what we had at the time through X before the election. My brilliant colleague, Emma Jo Morris, who's now moved on to bigger and better things, but she and Gabrielle Fonrouge pretty much laid out the tale of the laptop and the most egregious or some of the most egregious elements in there that were very damaging or should have been damaging to Joe Biden because he'd told us throughout the campaign that he knew nothing about his son Hunter's overseas business dealings. And, our very first story on October 14 of 2020 was about Joe Biden meeting with Hunter's Ukrainian business partner in Washington when he was vice president. And Joe Biden never, admitted to it at the time, and the rest of the media covered up, and big tech censored us, and the dirty 51 former intelligence officials were asked by Antony Blinken, who was then Joe Biden's senior campaign official, to write this dishonest letter saying that the laptop and therefore our reporting was Russian disinformation, and it all went away. And Joe Biden suffered no consequences, and he won the election. Well, he became president, let's say, thanks to these dirty tricks. And then they just covered everything up, and it's really egregious that even now the media hasn't fully, that sort of august institutional media like the New York Times and the Washington Post has never really come to grips with the lies that they told about the laptop, about Russiagate, the Russiagate hoax, the complete carte blanche they gave to Donald Trump's enemies in the CIA, in the FBI, the sort of deep state operatives who were undermining him from day one, even before he was elected, and concocted the lies about Russia. And, I think ultimately the failure of the media is as big a story here as the malfeasance of the deep state and these institutions. And also, I think the weakness of many Republicans, and you're better placed, Tudor, to talk about that. But I just see now with the seditious six that there are Republican members of Congress who are defending people like Mark Kelly and Maggie Goodlander and others who just were inciting the military and the intelligence community to be insubordinate at the very least and defy orders from the commander-in-chief, President Trump.
Well, we have people doing videos on it now. This is a normal thing for members of Congress now to say, go against the commander in chief. We just saw Alyssa Slotkin doing this, and now we have Mark Kelly, and people are saying this is fine. And I still can't believe that this is where we are, that we are accepting of this, and that Democrats don't push back on this and say, if you do this now, this will happen when we're in charge. They don't care. And I just want to say,
because it won't happen, because
that's
Republicans don't break the rules and they don't play dirty. There are some Republicans who still think that they have to play by the Marquis of Queensberry rules and do everything by the book and abide by traditions such as, not abolishing the filibuster. And it seems like they still think that we're in sort of 2015. Everything's changed. And,
So I want to talk about how, even because I think this goes into this whole story that you've been reporting on with Thomas Crooks. There is a lot of information about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump that we were not told, that was hidden. And the interesting part about this is that I see people going wild about the Epstein files, and yet we had an attempted assassination on our president, and at the time a former president and a candidate for president, and a man was killed, 2 other men were shot. There is a ton of information about this. He was a young man who did this, and yet this hasn't come out. And the fact of the matter is, he should have been under watch, and he should never have been able to get to the president.
Well, yes. And the catastrophe of choices made by the Secret Service, their utter incompetence, if that's just what it was, that allowed that 20-year-old Thomas Crooks to get onto a roof above a rally where President Trump was speaking in Butler, Pennsylvania, and fire off 8 shots before he was shot dead himself. It kind of defies belief. But then sort of compounding that problem is, why was Thomas Crooks never picked up as a potential threat when he was online in public forums using his own name, Thomas Crooks, on 17 different platforms that our source has found.
But we were told there was no footprint online of this guy, which that was what shocked me when I read that not only was there a digital trail, but it was of violent threats and extremist ideology. And he had already talked about murder and assassinations. And he was like regularly talking about this.
Well, I don't know where the idea came from that he had no digital footprint, because even the past FBI, Biden's FBI, in the 2 weeks after Butler, we had Christopher Wray testify, and also Paula Bate, then the deputy director of the FBI, testified. And Paula Bate did say that they had found some social media of Crooks with more than 700 comments, which I assume is the YouTube that our source found, because there are like 735 some odd comments from Crooks on there. So I assume he's talking about that. So I don't think the FBI was specifically saying there's nothing, but what Paula Bate did that I think was very misleading to Congress, and a lie by omission, was not to mention, he sort of gave the impression that Crooks was just this sort of far-right, anti-Semitic, pro-Trump person, or not, he didn't say pro-Trump, but anti-Semitic, far-right person. And so, just didn't like government. And so I think that's misleading, because what you see from the digital footprint that was discovered by our source is that, sure, that was Crooks up until December of 2019 for when he was 15, 16, 17, posting all the time. He hated Ilhan Omar, he hated the squad, murder the Democrats, all these vicious, violent ways he wanted them all to die and be killed and murdered. That was all very open. But then in January 2020, he flips, and he goes from being really pro-Trump, just saying he's the definition of patriotism and what a great guy he is. And then January 2020, he suddenly becomes harshly critical of Trump. He's anti-Trump. And then he becomes increasingly more violent in his rhetoric, and starts talking about, there's a long post where he talks about assassinating politicians and political leaders. And he's saying, you can only get power through the muzzle of a gun, etc. And he's talking about using an AR-15. Now, all of those should have been flashing neon lights to the multiple intelligence agencies, 17 of them, that Americans pay billions of dollars every year to fund, and all there at the intelligence divisions of all the different law enforcement agencies, including the Capitol Police, that should have been on the ball. Capitol Police has its own intelligence division, which does use web crawling type software to look through public comments. It's not.
So this is something that when we are just writing out on our social media, all these posts, they are actively being watched by the government. This is not like if you say something extreme, it's going to be found.
Yeah, not when watched. Like Kash Patel said, we can't, spy on people. This is just software that just looks through public information, not looking at your private email. It's looking at when you post.
Right. When you're posting.
When Thomas Crooks posts publicly on YouTube for anyone in the world to see, you've got this web crawling software that looks for names of the Capitol Police Intelligence Division, looking for names of members of Congress, 535, whatever there are, and their families. They're supposed to be protecting them. So look for their names, particularly members of the squad, I'm told, members of the squad, members of the Freedom Caucus, who are very prominent, sort of volatile, sort of controversial, say, and any words associated with them that are violent, like that Crooks used: murder, hang, burn, body, death, kill, assassinate. Those words associated with the names of members of Congress should at the very least have triggered some warning inside the Capitol Police. And
Wait. I just want to go back for a second. You're saying that there is this software that is protecting members of Congress, that you've heard that the squad is more actively searched than others because of their kind of their, I guess, rhetoric is a little bit more heightened. So they're watching that for that more closely. I just want to.
Not quite.
Okay,
So
what are you saying? Because I'm like, they're telling us like we don't need the police, but they have somebody even monitoring social media.
Yeah, there is an intelligence division of the Capitol Police. And I'm told by a former high-level Capitol Police person that they actively have as a priority, they protect all members of Congress, but as a priority, the more volatile ones who do get death threats, etc., they are, they're somehow elevated to even more protective status, and that this person didn't know exactly what the software is, but said all law enforcement uses web crawling type software, and there are different names for them, and it just 24/7. No one's looking at it. It just goes through, and if it finds, it's like when you do a Google search for a particular term and it just sends you updates. Oh, we just found Tudor Dixon's name in this story, right? So same thing. So it's very benign. It just goes through public posts. But if it finds the combination, and it's just simple, you go like with the Google search, you go Elon, Omar, and then you just have all these words that might indicate a threat. And if it comes up positive, as it would have in the case of Thomas Crooks 1 million times over, then that should flag extra scrutiny for Thomas Crooks. And it's not just the Capitol Police, which should have been flagged because of Elon Omar. The FBI, I don't know with it as much detail because they won't talk to me about it, but what the FBI does. But, we're told that from the Secret Service and the FBI that Thomas Crooks never came in on their radar before Butler. If he didn't,
but he
should have.
Yeah, because he threatened when he liked Trump, he threatened the squad and openly threatened the squad. When he decided he hated Trump, he went against him and he threatened him.
Yeah, he didn't actually say I want to kill Trump, but he talked about assassinating political leaders and military leaders. And so if you looked at his rhetoric in the months between January of 2020 and August of 2020, you could assume that he was going to go, if he was going to kill anybody, try to kill anyone, it would be likely that President Trump would be on his list of victims. But I've only got the minimal amount that was discovered by my source using open source and the sort of tools available to private investigators. We don't have the full story. We don't have Thomas Crooks' devices, his Google searches, his encrypted apps, all of the information that the FBI has. And I don't understand, since Thomas Crooks is dead, since the FBI is telling us and has always told us that he acted alone, since they're saying there's no foreign involvement, and effectively the case is closed, although Kash Patel says it's sort of, dormant pending if more information comes in, but they're not actively investigating. So I do not understand why more information, a full report has not been given to the American people, and particularly to members of Congress like Senator Johnson, like Pat Fallon, like others who have complained about being, quote, stonewalled by the FBI, including Trump's FBI. And, the fact that Ron Johnson in July, on the 12th month anniversary of Butler, had to actually subpoena Kash Patel because he was so frustrated that he hadn't received any of the information that he'd been asking for a year is pretty telling. And I think the reaction of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to people like me in terms of trying to discredit us and shoot the messenger, while at the same time confirming everything that we've said after the fact that we've reported, I think is also questionable. I honestly do not understand it. And I think that, at the very least, the president, Helen Comparatori, the widow of Corey, and the two men who were badly injured by Thomas Crooks deserve more information. And I also think that this, as Chris Swecker has said, former, I think, assistant director of the FBI or senior official, as he has said, this should be a learning moment and a time for the FBI to teach the public about what to look for, when these young men go off the rails. And we've had several of them commit all sorts of, assassinations and school shootings, etc. And they all seem to fit a similar pattern. So, what are the websites they're going on? What should parents look for? We're all in the dark. And, I don't think we can expect that the FBI is going to be everywhere, but you've got the American public, all the eyes and ears that should be there, able to give a warning if somebody like a Thomas Crooks is sailing under the radar.
Yeah, almost seems like there should be a new department within the FBI that is just researching these weird threats that seems like, it does generally seem like it's young men. I'll just ask you one more thing before I let you go. I know we're in a hurry. Did it seem odd that his body they got rid of the body as quickly as they did?
Yeah, it did. And certainly Clay Higgins thought it was really odd. Kash Patel addressed that he's done 2 interviews in the last few days. And he said, what did he say? He said, I think it was Kash, it might have been Dan Bongino. Anyway, what they said was they have to release the crime scene, and they had to, at some point they've got to release it, and they released it in normal. They'd got all the forensics they needed, and so they needed to wash the blood off. Fair enough, maybe that is the case. And but I'm glad that they're telling us that. But yeah. I don't know why it's taken 16 months to tell us when, all the conspiracy theories have flowed, and that included the cleansing of the roof and the fact that Crooks's body was cremated a few days later. Again, I think either Kash Patel or Dan Bongino's addressed that in just the recent days, saying, again, that they had to release the body after the autopsy to the family, and they decided to cremate it. Fine. I just think that there's a lot of questions also about the actual autopsy. I haven't actually been able to check this out properly yet, but I have been contacted by a couple of doctors who find that the autopsy results into Crooks are missing something. So I don't know why that would be, or if that really is the case. Trying to track that down before I report it out, but. Again, into a vacuum, all these questions come, and sometimes people, answer questions and they're completely wrong, and it becomes a massive conspiracy theory. And I think we should all try to avoid that. So maybe there just isn't a mechanism yet, and there should be a mechanism to answer these questions. I know in Australia and in England, there's a thing called, a coronial inquest in these kind of deaths, or these, like a Thomas Crooks death or Charlie Kirk's death. And that operates in parallel to any law enforcement investigation, and actually tracks down all the circumstances of the death, and then puts that out publicly so that people can see exactly what happened. And that allays fears and prevents these crazy conspiracy theories.
Well, Miranda Devine, we are so blessed to have you, because you are always chasing it down. And forget about Hunter Biden. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We are so thrilled that you are the person that puts the facts out there. And I'm so grateful for you that you came onto the podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tudor.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Make sure you join us next time, and have a blessed day.